again to everybody that has joined us today. My name is Jade Neivens-Brown, and I am the founder of Provisions Plus, which is an alternative provision specialist service. So we're going to go through a webinar with you today around understanding the importance of tailored curriculum in alternative provision. And we have a guest speaker with us as well. Bex Howe. So we will obviously talk more about Bex once we get to her part of the session. So to get started then, we just to give you a little bit of an intro into my service, Provisions Plus. So as I've mentioned, we are an alternative provision specialist service. And what does that actually mean? Because a lot of the time people get very confused and think that we're just calling ourselves a specialist AP service, as in like we deliver AP. That's not the case. So after a career of 15 years in alternative provision, it was very, very obvious to me that there were lots of gaps nationally in what alternative provision looked like, especially around the quality of delivery. So I set up Provisions Plus in 2024, September 24, to start finding where the gaps were in alternative provision and start to provide services so that we could fill those gaps. So that includes an AP best practice model. So any non-school APs that work with us are working towards that best practice model. We are the only organisation in the country that have a quality assurance accreditation against our audits in both quality assurance for AP and health and safety as well for alternative provision. We also help with alternative provision setups. So if an organisation comes to us or a person comes to us and they have an idea of something that they would like to deliver as in alternative provision, we can help them take that from an idea to a fully compliant, high quality service within a short period of time. We help with curriculum development with AP Consultancy, AP specific staff training, safeguarding audits and accredited programmes as well. So there's lots that we cover, and we work with schools, with non-school APs and also with local authorities. And Provisions Plus also have a free helpline for parents and carers to support families if they feel that they would like to know more about alternative provision, but they may not be sure what that could look like, how to navigate that, and how it may be able to benefit their child. So we have a team of people that also support with that as well. So we are the hosts of today's session. And we are going to kickstart really with why curriculum matters. So obviously, we all work in education. We all know that obviously there is a huge importance for curriculum. But what's really important is recognising the difference between curriculum when you are delivering in a mainstream school and curriculum when you are delivering in an alternative provision. So today, understanding the importance of tailored curriculum is what we're trying to focus on. And our guest speaker will give you lots of information about how her sort of approach to that can support. But we want to look at more of a broader angle from Provisions Plus, and we want to be thinking about how can we meet the young person where they're at, when they start provision with us, and what does that look like? Now, some of the hints and tips that we'll go through today, lots of organisations may already be doing this, but this is just food for thought so that you could be considering, are we doing these things? And if not, why not? Or can we add that into our normal practice? So there's many benefits of having a tailored curriculum, which includes rebuilding trust. Many of the young people that access alternative provision may have experienced lots of trauma from the education system, and it's really important that obviously when we're working with them that they can try and rebuild trust with the professionals that are working with them, because that's going to give us a real insight into what works for that young person in order to then help them. It will also help to develop confidence with the young person, create belonging so that they actually feel like they belong, because they know that you are obviously tailoring that curriculum around what works for them, and they will feel that. Regulating emotions, obviously, before any of our young people can be ready to learn, they need to feel comfortable, they need to feel safe. So it's really important as an alternative provision to make sure that you are going above and beyond to provide those things to the young person, and then obviously the curriculum that is supplied can come hand in hand with that. It will help to increase resilience. Knowing the young person and what they need, which we'll get onto a little bit more around understanding their needs, will help you to tailor a curriculum that actually is focusing on that young person, where they currently are, where they would like to get to, and capturing the student voice along the way with that as well. It will help to improve attendance because if we are providing a tailored curriculum that the young person understands is tailored to them, that they feel they can access that curriculum, it will help them want to engage. It will help them want to attend the sessions that you're delivering. And it will also help to prepare them for adulthood. So there's lots of different ways that we can do that in alternative provision, which is the lovely thing about alternative provision because obviously it can be so flexible. What we need to start with is understanding your learners' needs. So the priority is to understand the young people that we're working with, and like I've already said, meeting them where they're at. So this is supported by a strong and structured mapping process. So when schools or local authorities are making referrals into your services, we would hope that strong mapping process has already happened, which has identified all of the reasons why your provision would be the best for that young person. But we can't take that as gospel. So we need to do our own checks as well within alternative provision to make sure that we are the right setting for the young person, that we are providing a suitable provision that will meet that student's needs. And we can only do that when we've actually been able to identify what those needs are. So we need to consider that the amount of different levels of need. We need to think about what is, as an organisation, what is your threshold of need. So it's never about just accepting referrals for young people because you've got a provision and will accept a referral. It's about really understanding the needs of the young people so that you can tailor the curriculum to meet those needs. And that comes from doing lots of different things, such as I'm just going to. Yeah, so that comes from lots of different things. So things like identifying your niche. So when we're working with training providers, one of the things that we are always advising is that it's really important to understand who you are as an organization, what you can offer to young people, and understanding what your niche is. So know what your niche is and also understand the specialisms of your staff team, understand your audience, because no one training provider can actually meet the needs of every young person. So we want to advise really that you are really, really comfortable, really strong with your approach and that you know who it is that you're trying to help. By doing that as well, you can then obviously see the children that are coming to you clearer because you have identified that they are the audience that you're focusing on. So this will help uh, by understanding the young person's needs. So we've already mentioned about the mapping process, but then we'll look at assessments, inductions, referral and admission processes as well. So we are going to go into a little bit more information about those things, but it's really, really important that these things are happening. And like I say, around like the mapping process, often that may not actually be happening the way that it should from schools and local authorities. So it's important that as an alternative provision, that you're thinking about what can you do to start filling those gaps and understanding more about the young person before accepting a placement, or even when the young person has started with you, how can you now start meeting their needs? Because what are their needs? So ways that we can do that are by looking at personalised learning plans. So when a learner comes to you, we should have already had referral documentation that will give you an idea of who they are, what their level of need is, what maybe their strengths are, what their triggers are. But it's a very common theme that actually some of the documentation that you receive for referrals is not always a true indication of the young person that you're then working with. So it's priority for us as alternative provisions to actually start unpicking that information a little bit and seeing where actually we need to ask more questions. And that could be by having pre-interviews. So we would always recommend that a pre-interview happens anyway. It would then be conversations with the family, so the parents, carers, understanding more around what they feel that their level of need is for the child and what works for them. Making sure that your delivery team are aware of the documentation that's come through for referrals. and that they can actually deliver on the strategies that have been identified, that they're aware of any triggers for the young person, and making sure that all of this information is then pulled together. So we will share the slides after, they will be made available. But on here, we've got obviously personalised learning plans. So all of these different things should be pulled together to then feed into an individual learning plan. And an individual learning plan will help us to track the targets, the strategies, and the progress that is being made by a young person. Now, these will look different for all different training providers. Provisions Plus do provide templates and everything around what this ideally should look like and how it can capture everything about your young person. But what is often missed in this is what so often we see individual learning plans that will say like what the targets are for the young person, but it's often missed around what's working really, really well, what strategies are have been embedded, and have they been a success or not? Because it's really important to note if something isn't successful that we're still obviously managing that. But it's also really important to think about all of the tailored responses and the curriculum that you're using, because then if there's any staff changes or anything like that, they can obviously go from the individual learning plan as well and see what's really working well for the young person. But then also, this individual learning plan is then shared with home, it's shared with school, and it is shared with the local authority that may be involved with the referral as well. So school staff will see the curriculum, how it's been tailored for the young person, what's working for them, and then that will then help and come hand in hand with a successful reintegration when that young person is then looking at some kind of reintegration back into school if and when that's the plan. So we always recommend that when a young person starts in alternative provision, they have gone through obviously the admissions and referral process where staff have reviewed the documentation. It should then be a case of them really that they've been out for a pre-interview so that staff can make a decision on whether or not it's the most suitable setting for that young person. And then when they start, there should be an induction which feeds hand in hand with the ILP, which I've just covered really briefly. We should then get started with baseline assessments. So, in order to tailor any curriculum, it's really important to know exactly where that young person is starting with you for a number of reasons. And I'm asked this question so much over the years that I've worked in alternative provision, especially when I was working for the local authority, is especially if you're offering an engagement only program, lots of providers ask, well, why are we having to do baseline assessments? But actually, it's really important to know what if we know where the student is currently when they start with us, we then know that we're actually what we're asking of them is not too much, or actually that we can stretch them a little more. It's also really important because it can help us then measure the progress and track the progress that the young person is making. Even if we are delivering engagement only programs, it's still really important that that progress is being tracked. So depending on the type of course that you're delivering on will depend on the type of initial assessments that you do to gather that baseline information. We recommend that you are looking at academics, so generally to do an initial assessment in English and maths. We recommend there's different ways that you could do this, but we recommend the use of past functional skills. Online, you can get a free account with those so that you can do initial sort of baseline assessments. But there's also lots of organisations that use internal assessments for that as well. But as long as it is being done and it is being tracked, that will then help with impact reporting and with progress reporting for the young person. If you are delivering like a personal development program, it may also be that actually you want to do further baseline assessments, and we recommend doing SDQs, emotional literacy assessments as well. And that again can just really help you to get that baseline. What's really important is it's not done as okay, so this is the induction. We're going to get the young person in and we're going to start with an assessment, and then they're never going to come back because we've scared them off with all of these assessments. We need to make sure that we're doing it in a way that works for the young person, that you are obviously, again, really thinking about how can we get through to this young person and get them on board with doing these assessments. So we would never recommend that that's just something that you just go straight away and get them to do lots and lots of assessments. But it's really important for you to gather that information to then look at how you can tailor that curriculum further from the results of those assessments. We would then recommend that you look at building bespoke timetables for young people. that are accessing your provision. And the reason for this is because the whole point in alternative provision is that it is tailored. It's supposed to be tailored around the young person that you or the young people that you are working with. Now, obviously, depending on the type of provision that you're offering and the logistics, it may be more it may be sort of easier in some settings than others to have a bespoke timetable per child. But what's really important is that we are thinking about getting the very best of the time that you're spending with that young person. And that doesn't mean that every child has to have a different timetable for every single day that they're with you. But what it does mean is that if you know that that young person needs something in particular, that you're making time throughout in that timetable for them to have access to whatever that is that's going to help them to develop, progress, and for you to get the very best out of them. There are a number of things that we recommend you embed into like your normal sort of run-of-the-mill delivery for alternative provision, and that includes things like functional skills. So obviously, even again, if you are an engagement-only program and this isn't accredited, which is absolutely fine, it is still important for you to be trying to embed functional skills wherever possible, so that you are preparing and supporting the young people to make progress in these areas. There's lots of different ways that you can do that. So it may be that that's something that you again access through online portals and online services such as past functional skills, but also it may be something that you've created yourself that you can tap into. We also recommend personal development being embedded into programs. And there's a number of ways that we could do this, and employability. So there are organisations that obviously you can partner with. So Provisions Plus have a whole host of recommended suppliers, and our speaker today, Bex Howe, is one of those. But if anybody working in alternative provision would really like support around how to actually target these different areas, then we can make introductions to other professionals that can support with that as well. And then we also, one of the tools that Provisions Plus really recommends to use with your normal sort of delivery, it really doesn't matter what your delivery looks like and what it is that your current model is. But we recommend the use of the AQA Unit Award Scheme, because wherever your student is when they start with you, you can fully tailor their provision based around their strengths and areas for development. But also by implementing this and using this, you can actually get the award accreditations for each of the things that young people have accessed. So that actually gives them the opportunity to showcase all of the amazing things that they can do, rather than sort of being set for bulkier, longer accreditations or full qualifications that maybe they're just not ready for at this stage. So by embedding this, it could be any delivery. So it really doesn't matter what your delivery or what your program is focusing on. The use of the AQA Unit Award Scheme has over 20,000 different units. So if a young person, as part of the individual learning plan, you identify that they have a real sort of they really love doing something in particular, then you can then embed that into your provision, and you can use the AQA Unit Award Scheme as well to sort of really engage them with that and then get an accreditation for them throughout the delivery. So as a real sort of quick skim over the things that we would advise to start looking at, and like I say, this will be sort of sent out so that you can access it or be made available. We would like to introduce Bex Howe from How to Consultancy. And really, the whole sort of focus of today's session is to give Bex the opportunity to talk about her Roots, Leaves and Wings curriculum, because it's amazing, and I think that it needs to be heard by everybody. So everybody in alternative provision, we're going to be pushing this so that they can find out more and more about it. So the idea is for Bex to come and talk about it. So I'm going to hand over to Bex so that she can have a good amount of time to talk about that in detail. I'm aware that I've gone over our content very quickly because I know I could talk all day about alternative provision. So if anybody does have any questions, we will have questions and answers towards the end. And if you want to stick around and have further conversations, then I will be sticking around as well. So that's absolutely fine. So thank you so much for joining us, Bex. I'm going to hand over to you so you could talk about Roots, Leaves and Wings.
Good afternoon, everyone. I can't actually see you because I can't see your pictures, but I'll say hypothetically, it's great to see you all. Um, so absolutely delighted to be joining Jade and her team to talk about this. And what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to sell. I'm not going to sell to you. If you kind of want to know more at the end, then please make contact in terms of purchasing. But what I wanted to do is actually talk about the thinking behind the curriculum, and then what you can do is use that as a reflection point to think whether your current curriculum provides you that opportunity, or whether you kind of need to think about something else. So on to the next slide, please, Jade. So I'm sure, like all of us, what you've discovered over the last couple of years is that the needs of young people are becoming more significant, more complex. There's far more children and young people who have additional needs, and the finances to support these needs has become less and less. So it's not that much of a bigger task, is it, to support more needs, more complexity of needs with less money? So that was my thinking point in terms of when I began to think about roots, sleeves, and wings, is how we can actually give more children what they need with less money. And if I just briefly say, I spent 30 years in sort of education at various levels, including exec leadership and director of education. And the reason I set up How To is because, and no fault of the places I worked with, they were 100% committed individuals, but I was able to make less difference to less children because my role took me in a kind of different direction. So that's why I set up How To, and the whole focus of How To was to get on the shop floor again and find out what's going on and what people need, but more importantly, what the children need. And that has changed. I'm now just coming to the end of my fourth year in How To, and that has changed over those 4 years, as you would expect, and I'm sure you're experiencing. So generally speaking, that the thinking behind Roots, Leaves and Wings, that I needed to create something, or schools needed something, and alternative APs needed something that enabled them to be brave and meet the young person where they were, not to have to fit them into some sort of national framework or some other sequence of boxes that someone has provided for them. So that's the thinking behind Roots, Leaves and Wings, is that it empowers organisations that are working with young people, and sometimes individuals. Some of you may be on here, may be individual tutors, but you can actually just say, right, okay, let's just park, I don't know, science or phonics or mathematics. Let's park that, because right now that isn't what this young person needs. Their biggest barriers to learning are themselves and how they view the world and how they view themselves. So let's focus on developing and embedding those skills, and then they can look at learning and develop it, making progress in those more academic subjects. So as you can see on the slide, everything I've said, in addition to that, delays in external support and diagnosis. Again, the whole direction from government, and including the white paper, is that even if you're a mainstream school, that we need to be looking at those internal inclusion provisions, because there isn't the opportunity for young people to necessarily receive what they want in alternative provisions. I think it still depends a lot on the area you live in. Some areas are really advocating for those specialist schools. Some areas, whilst they might advocate for them, just don't have that capacity to provide that. So again, this is about encouraging and empowering organisations to feel confident in their own internal provisions to meet those ever increasing complexity of need for those children. The other two areas are, there is a higher expectation of us, quite rightly, I think, in terms of inclusion. And it's about having the opportunity and the infrastructure, if you like, as well as the curriculum, to be able to meet those 7 principles of inclusion. And I know the new inclusion standards are currently being worked on. I don't imagine they will differ a lot from the 7 principles inclusion, but I think they may be more specific. But also it gives us that opportunity in terms of that increasing rise, and again, quite rightly, in parental expectations and what they expect their child to be able to access when they're with us in our provisions. Okay, so as I said, it's about meeting more needs, more diverse complexities. You'll know that particularly if you do work in mainstream, but it may well be the case in AP as well, that there are less people wanting to work in this area. And so recruitment is sometimes an issue. Certainly recruitment of the right people is sometimes an issue. And we've got less money to do it. So what Roots, Leaves and Wings is, and these are the reflection points for you when you're thinking about your own current curriculum. It's basically, I've created it so that it does align with some of those national framework standards, but it isn't based on them. It's basically that these are fundamental standards, and the reason that I've done that is so that a child can transition back into mainstream successfully, and everyone knows where the benchmarks are. So it's about small steps. It's about measuring and celebrating small steps. Okay. It's about providing your staff with the resources. So less time planning, increased well-being, and reduced workload. And it's about you not needing to spend any more money to better meet the needs of your young people. So let me go into the telling you about what Roots, Leaves and Wings are. Thank you. So at the moment, the opportunity is thus. This is a stage, not age curriculum. All right. So it doesn't matter how old the child is. They access it at the development stage they are. So Earth is 0 to 18 months in nursery, and increasingly, because this is now out across 20 alternative provisions and mainstream schools. There are children who are sitting in years 2 and 3, and even older in some cases, certainly with seeds, who have not got those basic foundation skills that they need to get in those early development stages 0 to 5. So they are generally accessing earth and seeds. So earth 0 to 18 months, seeds 2 to 4 years. And remember, I said it's stage, not age. So it's really, really important that as practitioners that we make sure we go far back enough. Jade talked a lot about that importance of baselining and profiling a child. And again, this is the key to the success of this curriculum, is that you go back far enough and really work out the starting point of that child. Roots, Leaves and Wings primary, and then Roots, Leaves and Wings secondary, and then coming out starting in July is a whole series of Roots, Leaves and Wings workbooks for parents, so that they can actually support what's going on in your organisations at home as well. Thank you. So let me talk you through. So this is the earth and seeds. So as you'll see, earth has got 5 areas of development, and you can see clearly what those areas of development are. They're based on those core skills that a child needs to successfully transition into the next level of the preschool framework. However, they're focused on completely practical activities, and I'll talk you about how that looks, what that looks like. So you have each of those 5 areas, and again, there are baseline tools, there are tracking tools, and there are activities to help if those areas aren't strengths or aren't embedded skills for that young person, then that's the area you work on. And you can work on all 5 at once if you want. What very often happens is that you have young people who are some are accessing some of earth, some are accessing some of seeds, some are accessing primary roots, and some are accessing bits of primary leaves, which I'll talk about in a minute. But essentially, Earth and Seeds is about that preschool framework, making sure that they have those basic skills. Because otherwise, if we don't start far enough back, as you will know, we're building on quicksand. We're moving them into an early years curriculum, then we move them into a Key Stage 1 curriculum, yet they haven't got those fundamental skills that provides them with that strength and confidence to be able to access the next level of learning. Thank you. Oh, it's upside down. That's I'm not quite sure what's happened there. This is an extra challenge for a Monday. So you'll see is you've got roots, leaves, and wings there. So roots is essentially the early learning goals. So again, what I discovered through speaking with practitioners is that for if they had pupils in year 1 and year 2 that hadn't met all of the ELGs, but because of the, I suppose, the culture of the school and the demand, if you like, from the the external bodies in terms of whether in year 1 they need to be doing year 1 curriculum, they'd never gone back and actually checked to see if they could do those early learning goals. So again, they were building on sand. They were trying to look at that key stage 1 curriculum, but building on sand. So the roots pathway is the 6 key areas of the early learning goals that are fundamental to those foundation stages. The leaves pathway is SEMH, okay, and those life skills. So it's again removing those barriers for children that are preventing them from making progress in some of those other areas. And wings is you've got one that is literacy, reading and writing, one that is maths, and the other wings for primary school is about transition skills. So it's about making sure those individuals are confident and feel ready and safe to transition into the next stage of education. The Wings 1 and the Wings 2, so the W1 and W2, are based on the end of Key Stage 1 standards. Okay, so again, if you've got a child, which is very often happening in years 3 and 4, who still hasn't met those end of Key Stage 1 standards, or you're not sure, you would go back and look at the Wings 1 and Wings 2 just to check that those foundations are solid. You then also have, which I think is the next slide, Jade.
I just want to say well done because of that being upside down. You did very well there.
You then have the roots one. This is a secondary model, but also the roots part is part of the primary curriculum as well, because this is the pre-end of Key Stage 2. So this is looking at those standards for end of year 6 to see if they've met those standards. And if they haven't, it's supporting them in being able to meet those standards as well. And the roots 3 is about, again, those life skills and those confident areas that someone transitioning into secondary really needs in order to be able to access and enjoy their time in secondary. So the leaves again is the SMH and life skills, and I just want to talk you through the leaves. So these leaves very often are the areas which AP organisations are focusing in on, because they're very often the biggest barriers to that child's progress and that child sometimes for even being in your AP. And so the leaves is a big piece of work in terms of lots of resources, and there's lots and lots of different areas there, which again enable you to baseline, really focus in on what the child can do, what the young person can do, and where that learning needs to start. And then the wings is based on the preparation for adulthood, and also basic life skills that they need to then transition successfully into and confidently into the next stage of education. So you can see you've got careers, CV writing, self-care and independence. AI as a technology as a tool. So when I was doing the research for the secondary wings, I went out to 3,000 plus employees to find out what they were looking for in young people. There were 3 top areas, and it won't surprise you that English and maths were not in them. The top 3 were teamwork, a team player, solution-based, so a strong problem solver, and reliability. They were the top 3 that consistently came back from employers. And so what I wanted to do in this is build opportunities for them to develop those skills, but most importantly, the use of AI. When a young person starts, unless they're going into something specific that is literacy or mathematically based, they're not given a notepad and a pen. They're given a laptop or a computer. And so their knowledge and the confidence in the use of AI outside of the social media forum is really essential to these young people feeling confident to access some of the opportunities that will come their way. And then you'll see at the end, I've put financial life skills and domestic life skills, because again, in order for them to feel confident and independent, those are really fundamental skills that I felt they needed to have in order to sort of feel their age, if you like. They didn't still want to, when I spoke with the young people in preparing this, they didn't still want to be relying on whoever is at home to prepare their meals. They wanted to have a partner around and cook them a meal. So again, to just show a bit of independence, but also they wanted to know about the money. They wanted to know about the basic opportunities and the basic pitfalls, but also around finance, but also about how to manage their own budget and looking at key things like budgeting. Okay. So I wanted to just talk you through the primary framework, which is a little bit easier for you now because it's up the right way, so you'll be able to read it. So how this historically happens, and how the schools are working with this. So you have X child, okay, that is in your setting, and you with the practitioners or the class teacher or even the parents beforehand, depending on how you choose to do it, you look at this and you highlight all the areas where you think these are potential barriers to this young person living the life they've always dreamed of. Okay, so you highlight them, and it's very likely that there'll be multiple areas across there. Generally speaking, at primary, there could be roots, leaves, and wings, but generally speaking, it will either be roots and leaves or leaves and wings. That's kind of generally how it sits. However, as I said earlier, you may find that some of the young people, or also you've gone back into seeds to look at. So you've highlighted all of these areas. And then you're going to choose, then I'm going to give you an example. So then you would go to the stepping stones, which are in the pack. Okay, which is the next one. So you have, for every single one of those areas that was on the previous slide, you have a stepping stone. And the whole purpose of the baseline of the stepping stone is to baseline where that child is. You'll notice I've written each of them in I can, because I want it to be done with the child, so that they begin to take ownership. And particularly at secondary level, I think this is even more important, that they actually have that reflection opportunity themselves and have those conversations as and when they're ready. So this is the communication and language for roots. So you would go, you'd think about X child, or you'd sit with X child and say, okay, I can speak confidently and fluently in a range of contexts. If they can, and it's an embedded habit that they feel confident about and you feel confident about, you then move on to the next stepping stone. Once you get, and the stepping stones are all progressive. So it's not that, okay, well, they can do number 1, they can do number 4, and they can do number 7. Okay, they're all progressive. So if they're embedded habits, each stepping stone builds on the previous, builds on the previous skill. So once you get to the stepping stone where you think, actually, do you know what? Not embedded, that's not an embedded habit. So I think we need to just either make that more secure, or actually that's quite a major development point for them. You would then go into the curriculum, and sat behind that curriculum, and for the secondary, there are 150 activities for each stepping stone. Okay, so if you go to the next slide, please, Jade. So sat behind there are a whole list of activities, and this is the fundamental difference. Apart from having an SEMH pathway as well, the fundamental difference is that your practitioners no longer have to plan. There is a whole list of activities, and they just pick from the menu. Jade mentioned earlier about their learning preferences. And so according to your individual's learning preference, or your group of children's learning preference, you would pick activities that would lend themselves to their strengths or their enjoyment. So some are indoors, some are outside, but they're all practical. Okay, so your practitioner would pick from the activities. As you absolutely know, repetition enables things to become embedded. So there are enough activities in each of the curriculum to last at least a year, because you are repeating, and to embed those habits. But you might change different activities. You might choose one, and it's a spectacular fail with that group of young people, and so you think, right, let's just try another one because that one didn't work. But there are the options there. So the menu is there for your practitioners to pick from. What you would then do that, after that, is you'd go back to the stepping stone, and you'd either rag rate, so you might colour it green. What if Jays, if you could just go back, if that's possible, sorry. So you might have it up electronically, and you might just rag rate it so you can track progress. What a lot of practitioners do is they print off the stepping stones, and they just date when they begin to see that evidence. They date it, and once they're confident that it's an embedded habit, okay, they green it, and then they move on to the next one, onto the next stepping stones. Thank you, Jade. If you can,
That could,
you can.
sorry, that could quite nicely be sort of embedded into internal tracking as well for alternative
Yeah.
provision, couldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, thank you. It's absolutely, this is your tracking document. So
Yeah.
this curriculum has been through 2 Ofsteds already. Ofsted loved it because it meets the child where they are. They can track the progress, and they can show progress. And the wonderful thing about the stepping stones is you can celebrate the progress with the child and the parent or the carer or the guardian. So instead of having those conversations where you say, well, they're still working below or they're still working towards, what you can say is, actually, look at this, look at the progress they've met. And one of the alternative provisions that is currently running this, I spoke with the lead practitioner recently, and this is where it makes me really emotional. And she was speaking about a young man who'd been deemed by the local authority as unteachable, and this young person had gone to their alternative provision, and they'd started on, I think, 3 or 4 of the leaves pathways. Mum had reported that he was a different child at home, that he was having conversations, he had more energy, he was excited to go to school. So it won't come as any surprise that his PA was high, not just because of his suspensions from the previous school, but just because he didn't want to go, because he didn't feel as if he was valued.
Yeah.
So 100% attendant for the sessions they have, and really, really great progress. So once the pathways they'd chosen were his biggest pebbles in his puddles. And when I mean that is, you'll know yourselves, you all have big pebbles which have the biggest ripple effect. So I always say to schools, choose your biggest pebbles, because once you've removed those pebbles, the ripple effects will reduce. So they'd focused on his biggest pebbles, and he is just a different child. It is
It's
just
wonderful.
amazing and wonderful to see the difference in him.
And the difference in him then has a huge difference on the whole family dynamics, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
So,
really
yeah.
does. It really does. Okay, thank you. Keep going, please. So this is generally the impact, and there's lots of stories and case studies that I could share with you, because they're the best bits when you hear the individual impact on children. But generally speaking, this is the feedback from schools that have been working with the Roots, Leaves and Wing curriculum. They spend less time reinventing provision and more time supporting pupils. Because of the way it works, and obviously if you were interested, we could have a separate conversation in terms of the context and how this would work in your schools. And I do offer opportunities for people who are thinking about investing in the programme to come and visit schools that are already running this, so you can see how it really works and speak to the practitioners that are doing it. Every child is making progress from starting point in whatever area. Every child is making progress. And one of the schools that has piloted reported on a young person who was in year 5 but working at pre-key stage, end of key stage 1 in maths and literacy, But again, they were brave. They said, no, that's not the focus. We're going to work on some elements of leaves. So they've been working on leaves with him now for a term and a half. He's finished the pathways, and he's now working above age-related in Key Stage 2. So the barrier to that young person wasn't his maths or his English knowledge. It was those SEMH and life skills areas which were preventing him from making the progress. So there are multiple layers of support that are available. You don't just have to do one pathway. You can do it however you choose to. Alternatively, in some schools, they've identified children that come out for 10 minutes a day to work on pathways, but then access the main curriculum for the rest of the time. It's entirely up to you what suits your context and what suits your school. So every term I send like a sort of, if you like, a mini data capture with questionnaires, etc., to each of the schools. And if they choose to, they share them back with me and I produce them an impact report. So the impact report can be shared with the governors. It's great for external, and it can just be shared internally. Okay, in terms of a really well done to your staff. Look at the difference you're making to these young people. So again, that's an option there. You're meeting more needs within existing and often reduced staffing budgets. And again, we can talk about what that might look like. I worked with a school last Friday, and they had 3 agency TAs, which were costing them £360 a week for those agency TAs. Once we profiled and looked at how Roots, Leaves and Wings could be rolled out further, they'd quadrupled the number of children that they were able to support, but they no longer needed to employ those 3 agency TAs. So there's real opportunity here as well. Your staff feel great because they're not spending hours planning, and we all know, don't we, our staff want to make the difference. It's not lack of motivation, they just don't know how. And so their well-being is hugely increased because they know they're making a difference to that child. They know they're giving them what they need. And parents love it because parents are no longer having that hassle at home to get their child into school, or what's the point of me going, I'm only going to be doing this, or because the child feel confident, they feel valued, and they belong. That is becoming their place of learning and opportunity. Okay. So you'll see. So this is kind of what you'll get if you choose to invest. And like I say, I'm not even going to do the prices because I'm not going to sell even. It's only Monday. I'm not going to sell to you from here. But what you do get is a range of resources. You'll get parent questionnaires for those parents who perhaps need convincing a little bit more if you're not in an AP. You'll get all the electronic all the electronic resources will be sent. I've even included job descriptions for if you're looking to recruit someone to run this kind of the Roots, Leaves and Wings. Like I say, you'll get the offer and impact report. And coming in September is the Roots, Leaves and Wings Practitioner Academy, and you'll get automatic membership of that, which will provide you with a huge range of video resources, practical resources, half-termly webinars, and the opportunity for significantly discounted other courses, etc., etc. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. And I appreciate it's really hard without holding it and looking at it to understand what this looks like. But if I kind of say to you the secondary Roots, Leaves and Wings is 3 folders of resources and stepping stones. So it's 3 thick folders. So what I've tried to do, and the feedback is that we are there, is give you something that this will tick nearly all your boxes in terms of the challenges and the frustrations you're having. There's no subscription. It's a one-off payment. you haven't got much money. The last thing you need to be doing is subscribing and paying every year. So it's a one-off payment. And then because you're also then members of the RLW Practitioner Academy, you'll get updated resources as they come through as well. So I'm going to pause for breath because, like Jade, I'm equally as passionate about getting it right for these children. And we'd both be very happy to take any questions. If you're sat here thinking, listening to this and thinking, well, what about this or what about that? Then please just ask. Please just ask us.
I think it's really wonderful, isn't it? Because there's so like the curriculum there is amazing, and like you say, like it's there so that the people delivering have the resources, and it helps them spend more time with the young people because actually they're not panicking about the planning. And like I mentioned earlier around the AQA unit award scheme, so many of those units could sit very nicely
Mhm.
alongside that as well. So the students can also have the AQA units to support. So yeah, it's wonderful. So yeah, over to questions and answers. There is a question box. If anybody does have any questions or anything that they would like to ask, then please feel free. We'll give it a couple of minutes and see if we get any come through. Everything that we've mentioned today, so like obviously everything that Bex has mentioned, what's included in her package. So if you are interested in any of that, then please make contact with Bex direct. And also any of the resources to support with tailoring curriculum in alternative provision around trackers, individual learning plans, schemes of work, lesson plans, any of those things are also available through the Provisions Plus toolkit as well. So if that's something that you feel that your organisation needs more support or you'd like to have a conversation around what that could look like, then please also get in touch with us at Provisions Plus and we'll see if we can help. Just
And
gonna
just to
go.
say, if you're on LinkedIn, I'd love you to connect with me, not because I'm going to sell to you, but I always find it so interesting and so helpful to see what everyone else is doing, and to sort of just observe. So please feel free to connect with myself or Jade, I'm sure. And
Yeah,
our
absolutely.
partnership will continue. We've got lots of exciting things planned for the future as well. But love to know what you're doing and where you are on your journey in terms of making a difference to more young people.
Okay, so it seems like no one's got any questions.
It's Monday. Oh, it's one from Ben.
How can I access templates for individual learning plans? So the Provisions Plus, if you get in touch with me direct, Ben, I can ring you through the different options for that. So we have a whole toolkit of available resources that are all tailored to non-school APs. So depending on what level of access you want will depend on what that looks like. So if you want to just pop me an email or contact me on LinkedIn, we can have a conversation around what those packages look like. Thank you.
People are still typing. And just to say, if you'd like to come and see this in practice, the Roots, Sleeves and Wings in practice, then let's have, um, yeah, that's absolutely it, Amy. A lot of my mainstream schools are working with Roots, Sleeves and Wings as well
Yeah.
as the APs. So yeah, for exactly that reason.
And you said, Bex, didn't you, that some schools are using this alongside like their normal curriculum? They're then tapping
Yeah,
into this. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's you've got children that are going in and out
Yeah.
of both. The idea being that is that at the end of their time in that particular school, they feel confident and ready to transition and
Yeah.
excited about it. Waiting,
Any
Ben,
other
while you finish
questions?
typing. There's
Oh,
two
can you
people
see people
typing.
typing? I can't see anybody typing.
Oh, it's probably because you're doing the side. So Ben and Alice are currently typing. Just wondering if we can let them just kind of talk direct, or is that not?
Yeah. I think you can unmute yourself. So if you want to talk, then please feel free to do so.
Alice, which school are you in? Oh, yes. Yes, of course you are. Yes, I've been speaking to with your deputy head today. So that, yeah, that is exciting. And I will be in, Alice, as well, to kind of work with you all and just go through it. So thank you for joining us. That is really great to have you on here.
Ben, have you managed to unmute?
I don't know if we need to unmute, do we?
It's saying it is unmuted. You're off of mute, but I can't hear you. I'm so
Back to
sorry,
the
Ben. No,
typing
we
then.
also don't know.
Back to the typing.
Okay, so in terms of complete setups of alternative provision, that's one of the things that we specialise in, Ben. So if I send you a follow-up message, we can look at all of the different ways that we can support with that. Because one of our packages actually does the curriculum architecture as well. Would it be possible for you to pop your email address into the chat for me? Perfect. Thank you. I'll make contact. Oh, it's ever so weird, isn't it? Not being able to talk to people.
Yeah, and very odd to not see them as well. I
Yeah,
find it. I like to see the whites of the eyes of people to see if I'm boring them, and then I'll tell a joke or something. So it is odd to not see
it is
people's
very
faces.
strange. Oh, got a bit of typing.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay, no worries, Ben. Thank you so much. I'll reach out to you. Okay, so if nobody else has got any questions, then that's great. Thank you so much for joining us. What we will do is I will pop, Bex, if you want to pop your email address in the chat as well, and I'll also pop mine in. And then if you have any questions for either of us direct, please make contact with us. And then obviously I will. The recording will make that live on the Provisions Plus YouTube channel so it could be rewatched if needed. And also just get in touch if you want any of the like the presentation or anything sending over.
Jade, also, if you're able to click onto the next slide, I think there is a QR code which they can find me. That's it.
Oh,
They can
sorry.
look. Oh, it's back. That's it. Thank you all so much for your time on a Monday. The good news is it's Tuesday tomorrow, which means it's nearer to
Yeah,
Friday. So keep going and keep being brilliant. Everything you're doing with your young people is making such a difference. And so we just thank you for that.
it really is. I love how you're already hoping for Friday and it's literally Monday.
I'm just thinking of the positives, although every day is lovely, just different. Okay, I think.
Right, okay. I think we'll leave it there then. Thank you so much, everybody. And like I say, get in touch if you need anything further. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.